157. I will get it. I will get it right.
Hey, better late than never, you know?
You're live on Facebook, my friend,
I love being live on Facebook.
and I've allowed you to record. So we're gonna end it. We're gonna end it properly on this beautiful Friday. Is what we're gonna do.
Boom. Shared.
Love it. Love it. How's your week going?
I was hoping you were going to talk about this today.
I'm gonna tell the story as gingerly as I can, but it is true. I actually raised my voice for the third time. Excuse me. I need to be correct here. Third time in about 20 years. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. That's just not who I am. I'm a loud talker, and my wife likes to remind me of that, especially when she's trying to whisper something to me. I'm not supposed to repeat it back to her at 27,000 decibels, but I do that.
Keeps life more interesting.
It's one of the things she hates the most. She's like, you do that all the time. I'm like, then don't tell me secrets, because I'm terrible at number one, I can't hear because it's been too much Snoop, Dre, and DMX over the last 20 years. But yeah, I'm just terrible at this stuff. So how can I tell this story gingerly? Let me think about this.
Put some fucking hot sauce on it, Ben. Live a little. It's the weekend. Let's go.
I had an incident yesterday at work, and we've talked about this on the show. Part of what I do, part of the success, I think, of what I do is I care. Part of the success and part of my kryptonite are exactly the same things. I care so much about what I do. I absolutely love, it's taken me 25 professional years to figure out exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm sitting in this chair, and I've figured it out. I've finally cracked this code of this part of my life. And I'm hugely appreciative of that. But the downside of it is when things don't go well, like I have a really hard time separating life and business, just because, as you know, in this lifestyle, you don't punch out at 5 o'clock, you just don't. I had 3 phone calls after 9 p.m. this week. Like it was just because I have things that are ramping up, projects that about that are ramping up. And literally that's the only time that I can talk to these guys, because they're on West Coast time or whatever happened. So the reason I titled this stream this way is because of what happened yesterday. I have a vendor that I work with who is really one of my top vendors for a portion of my production stack. And they are my go-to guys. Like I text with them, I email them, I call them, and I really make sure that I bring a lot of business to these guys. So I have probably, 5 or 6 projects in the pipeline with just this one company, really good guys, fantastic work. So I had an incident with a client that really pissed this vendor off, And it was a payment issue. Things got crossed. I'm not going to get into it, but there was just an issue, and I know it was an issue. And I've been talking to my client, and I said, listen, we really need to get this cleaned up. So fast forward to yesterday, and I had another very large client place a purchase order with this company, with this vendor, and it was a very timely purchase order. If we didn't get this thing done this week, they would have missed their very large event at the end of August and would not have had the beverage to sell at this event. So we submit the purchase order. It is a 50% deposit was what the structure was. So it was a significant amount of money that my client had to pay this vendor. I'm talking like $46,000, like not like couch and money in the couch cushion money, like literally $46,000. So my client literally has her banking app open, waiting for the invoice to come in for $46,000. My vendor then takes that opportunity to respond in 30 seconds, responds back and says, because of what's happened with other clients, we are now putting all of your clients on COD, 100% cash upfront, a change of $46,000. So I actually thought about this the right way. So I was in the middle of one of my hour-long walks. Thank God I was in the middle of nowhere, and I was exercising at the time because it made me think a little bit more clearly. But I didn't call my client. I could not in good conscience have called my client at that moment because I would have lost it, and I would have lost it to the wrong person. So what I decided to do was I said, I texted my guy at the vendor, and I'm like, dude, you have to call me right now. You literally waited until I had the next order to be placed and shipped to drop the hammer to put all of my clients on COD. I said, the optics of this straight sucks. It really sucks. And I don't use that word very often. So for me, he texts me, and I knew I could hear him. He had a dry mouth when he called me. He calls me. He's like, hey, Ben, we got to talk about this. I'm like, no kidding. We have to talk about this. I'm like, you chose this exact moment to put all of my clients. I'm like, I'm trying to give you $46,000 today, like literally wire it to you today. He goes, well, we're just going to have a discussion. So we're going to have them wire the $92,000. I go, no. I'm like, this is not happening. And I started to raise my voice, and I go, Rich, if I've learned one thing and have been self-aware in my career about one thing, I know that I'm only good with like 3 or 4 things. One thing I'm really good at is maintaining relationships. That is one thing I'm really good at. And that is how I feed my family today. I have maintained, at this point, dozens of relationships over the last 4 years that have allowed me to launch projects with some really cool people. I said, what you just did with this email is not only did you generate friction with the current client that you have an issue with, you've now added unneeded friction to 5 other clients that I'm currently trying to onboard with you. That's what you've just done. Not only have you soured this relationship, not out of your fault, I get it, but you've also soured 5 relationships unnecessarily. I said, what is preventing me right now from picking up the phone and calling the 3 other contacts that I have that do the exact same thing that you do and bring my client's business over to them? What's preventing me from doing that? And I was consistently raising my voice. And he started to say, he goes, Ben, you're not wrong about the timing of the message. I dropped, I've been hanging out with too many teenagers. When I said this, I screamed. I go, bro? I go, bro, not only am I not wrong, I'm effing right, is what I screamed at him. And he goes, you're 100% correct. I go, I don't want to be correct. I said, what are we going to do about this? That's what I care about. He goes, I got to call you back. I go, fine. I'm like sprinting up this hill halfway into my walk. I'm not a runner. I hate running. I literally started sprinting just to get my blood pressure down. He calls me back. He goes, all right, I'm going to bend on this next one. I go, what does that mean? He goes, we're going to go back to the original thing. We're going to do the 50%. I go, okay, I guess you're giving me something. He goes, but we're really going to need to review any future opportunities and look at it and maybe get some financial statements and stuff. And I go, fine. I go, whatever. So it has been such a roller coaster week. I literally just hung up a phone call with something else that you and I have to talk about. So it's just been this roller coaster. So for me, after I've had 24 hours to kind of sleep on it and think about it, it's like, I love that I have the opportunity to do what I do, but it's so hard sometimes to be on that even keel when you do hit that crater like that. Because I was on my run, and when I hung up, before he called me, I saw like, my client base flash before my eyes, and I'm like, oh my God. Like I just got into this spiral for a minute, and I said, wait a minute, slow down, take a deep breath. You're going to iron this out. And it ended up working out. But once that email gets sent, man, like, I don't know if you view that relationship the same way ever again. Like, not because he said what he said, it was when it was said. He waited until he had me to drop the hammer. And I was just like, I'm literally going to have to reevaluate this. And I got a new opportunity this morning. And guess what? I called my number 2 guy. I said, what do you got for me? So I don't have a point in my story. I'm venting, and that's part of what we use this show for. So yeah, that's what's happening, man. What do you think? I don't even have a good question. I usually have good questions for you. I don't even have a good question.
Well, I mean, I think it's a lot of things, first and foremost, we talk about communication on this show a lot.
Yeah.
That's about as F- of a communication as you could have for that particular vendor.
Yep.
I don't want to give away any parts of your story that you don't want out there. And I know we talked about it yesterday, so I'm choosing my words carefully. But yeah, man, I think it's one of those things that sometimes you kind of got to be the asshole.
Yeah.
And I think that for as much success that you've built on being the mellow, we'll figure this out, get it right rather than be right kind of guy, sometimes you have to raise your voice. And I think that that's a perfectly good example where, you start talking. You said the dollar amount, right?
Yeah.
You start talking
money.
Your lack of communication creating $46,000 issues. That's people's livelihood level. That's not a production run, costing a couple $100 extra or being a couple of days late. That's a full year's salary for the average American, or close to it probably, and it's one of those things that, a big part of what you do in client services is managing personalities and emotions and egos, right? So, it's not just about the money. Like at that level, that's a big part of it. But the other big part is that, especially with you, everything that your vendors do is a reflection on you to some regard, and you have a deep enough and a diverse enough client base where you have different people that would handle that differently. Like you told a story about Cole and Miracle Lemonade where there was a massive fuck up by the vendor, but he was super cool about it. He knew it wasn't your fault and he knew you'd fix it. But there's clients on the roster, anything that goes wrong is your fault. Whether it is or isn't, it's on you to get it right and make sure the process gets it right. So I fucking get it, man. It's one of the reasons that I try to over communicate our expectations and what exactly we're in control of and what exactly we aren't. I'm going through it right now. We have a client that's doing some pretty major pivoting, and we had a verbal conversation about what we're going to do. And I think we're very much on the same page of it. But before starting, I'm like, we're good, but let's get something down on paper and really reset here.
Yep.
I want to make sure there's 100% clarity in what you can expect out of me and vice versa. And then the other thing, like, I want to make sure this is going to work and we don't have to do this again in 3 weeks.
Yep.
And that's going to probably like delay our billing cycle by a couple of days, which fuck it. Like I've always much rather go long-term than short-term on that stuff.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that's not something that people do. And I think a big part of it, to be honest with you, is just people are afraid of conflict. That decision is probably a decision that was made internally over at your vendor, days, if not weeks ago.
Yep.
But rather than upfront, getting you on a call, like, hey, Ben, here's where we're at. Here's why. They sat on it. Like, I'll email them tomorrow. I'll call them Thursday. It's a holiday weekend. I'll talk to them Monday. And then all of a sudden you have a new PO coming in. And then it's like, oh shit, I haven't told Ben this yet. Without knowing those guys, I highly doubt that they just wanted to be an asshole.
Yep.
But, avoiding confrontation, as we often see, makes the situation 100 times worse.
Yeah. And that was kind of the punchline. I gave him a little left jab because I think I was owed it at that point. And he said, Ben, this PO has been a long time coming, which adds to the speculation of whether they're going to pay for it or not. I said, no, it doesn't. I said, that's how these things work. These things, it's rush, 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 wait, rush, 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 rush. That's just the nature of this business. And I told the guy, I told him, I said, so what you're telling me is it added speculation, but it also added time that you could have picked up the phone and called me. So with all these delays, you chose not to pick up the phone and say, hey, we're getting a little nervous over here. Here's a $92,000 purchase order. We're getting a little nervous over here. This is adding to the speculation that they may not pull the trigger either now or on the payment cycle. Do you mind if we dig into the financials with this client? Like, that's it. You avoid me screaming at you by having that conversation 6 weeks ago. It's like, is this really going to happen? Is this client really going to happen? Is this event still happening? All that stuff. So it to your point, it could have been prevented. I am a number one guy. I hate conflict. It is one of the things. It's one of the things I say to all my new clients is I get to pick and choose who I work with, and the people that I pick and choose to work with are as frictionless as possible. And now that you're on a few of the teams, like the people we work with, they are about as frictionless as possible. Does that mean we don't work hard and we don't have some tough conversations? No, it doesn't mean any of that. But at the end of the day, they're good dudes, and they understand that what we bring to the table and the advice that we give to them is inherently in their best interest. And that's one of the things I always say is, literally after this phone call, I have to make a phone call to a client, and he's not going to like what I have to say. Like, he literally has something happening inside of his cans that is causing a chemical reaction that is deteriorating the quality of his beverage. Like, literally, I have to make that phone call after you and I hang up right now. I'm going to tell him, you're not going to like what I have to say, but you have to dump that entire batch, and we have to bill it back to the co-packer because it's their fault because they blended it wrong. I have to go say that after this. But at the end of the day, he understands that conflict or that friction that I'm bringing to him is going to cause less friction down the road when his can gets into somebody's hand and it literally explodes because the seam wasn't done right on the end. So, I'd much rather have a hard conversation now than get into a screaming match in 6 weeks.
Well, I think the other thing too is I've weirdly learned to embrace conflict in those exact situations. Like, I would much rather have us have a 3 or 4 out of 10 conflict today than a 14 out of 10 2 weeks from now, because we tried to avoid it. And I think that, like, the real toxic part of it is that when you wait, you just end up in those finger pointing situations,
right?
Like, who fucked it up, right? Well, all right, well, the co-packer mixed it wrong, but how did that happen? And when did we know about this? Well, why didn't you tell me in June 4th? Like, there's June 11th today. And then, and then it's just, that team's done, that team and probably that project are finished, so that's where more just being upfront, like, hey man, like, here's the exact reality we're facing. Co-packer X fucked this up in this way. This is what's happening. Already talked. Like, that's the other thing. Like, the immediate background work that you already did.
Yep.
Already talked to them. We're billing it back because it was their screw up. Here's how we're fixing this. Here's our new reality.
Yep.
If you have good people, like you said, they might be mad and they might be upset, but you've literally put them in the best position to get through it.
Yep.
Right? Like, presented facts as soon as you had them. Hey, here's the reality. Here's how we're already fixing it. This is where we're at. Let's go. What do you want to do?
And we had a call earlier this week, and I could tell, like, I actually discuss more and more. I'm actually getting into this with clients. I'm actually discussing mental health with them a lot more as entrepreneurs. And I think it's now people are really starting to react to it. And I'm not patting myself on the back. What I mean by saying that is, I told him same guy, about probably 2 months ago, before we even canned our first product. I said, what you're about to do, because he's literally launched a brand in the Berkshires. It's a great brand. I'll have to send you some. But he's also planning a wedding. Like, he and his fiance own this. Like, they're planning a honeymoon, they're planning a wedding, they're launching a business, they're doing distribution, they're spending their money. And I'm like, dude, bro. I was like, oh, there you go. That's right on cue. That's actually him. He's, but I said, hey, what you're about to do is going to be, it's going to be a huge leap, and I want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And he's like, oh yeah, I got this. And he called me this week, and he goes, yeah, I'm not sleeping. I'm waking up with, uneasy stomach. Like, he's like in the throes of it right now. And so we should probably talk for like 10 more minutes, and I do need to call him. But
Yeah.
my point is, I just want to, what I told him this week was, we have to look beyond this current co-packer. We have to, because they've done 3 runs now, and they've been inconsistent for each run. Like, one has been the wrong carbonation, one's been the wrong color, one's been the wrong flavoring, every single one of them has been different. And I said, dude, you need to start looking beyond these guys, because if you don't, you're going to continue to not sleep. You're going to continue to have an upset stomach. You're going to continue to spiral down this path until you have your crash. And I told him about my crash, 3.5 years ago. So I said, before this week is over, we need to get you into introductions with other co-packers that are more professional, more consistent. Yes, they're going to cost more money. Yes, they're going to have bigger toll fees. Yes, they're going to have bigger production amounts. Yes, it's going to be more cash coming out of your pocket. You need to go out and do a friends and family raise just to take the steam off the teapot. And it is starting to work. But it's thinking, when you get into the weeds. I just had this conversation with the person I just hung up with. It's so hard to have that 30,000 foot view when you're in it. It is so hard, because you don't want to give yourself permission to look at the 30,000 foot view, because all you see in front of you is a roadblock. I cannot process my day until I get past this roadblock. And that's when I really try to level set with these guys. And this is what I'm going to do with him. As soon as I pick up the phone, I'm going to say, remember, we talked about this. I know you're seeing inconsistencies. Get something into the can that you're proud enough to stand behind the table, because they're having their grand opening party this weekend too. Like, he is in it right this second. So that's going to be my phone call to be like, okay, how can we solve the problem today? You can confidently stand behind the table at your grand opening and sell confidently. And that's just going to be that little tweak I'm going to have to put in his head so that he can go out there and sell as much as possible. But yeah, man, it is so hard to see the forest through the trees sometimes. And it's really, I understand, I'm uniquely positioned to understand their frustrations. And that's what I think a lot of the things I talk to my clients about almost on a weekly basis.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of the expectations that you got to create. It's one thing to talk about the actual business side of stuff and the mechanics and the logistics and the operations that you have to run everybody through. But like, if they're not right, emotionally and mentally on the other side, none of that matters.
Right.
And I think that it's one thing that I know you've seen just from watching it, but you can see those the same way that you can see pitfalls with co-packers or flavor formulators or whatever. You can see those same pitfalls starting to creep up in the mentality and the psyche of your people, and they're just as important, because you're 110% right. I mean, we've seen it in the shit that we work on together. You have to work 6-9 months ahead if you're going to have success in that industry, at least, probably more in certain countries. But, and if you are in a position where, for whatever reason, you can't step back and you can't look 6 hours ahead, let alone 6 months, you're dead. So, from your perspective, if you don't stop and fix that right away, you're doing yourself and them a disservice, because you're probably not going to make it 6 months.
No, you're not. And it's funny because you're right. A lot of times I find myself saying, let's take a breath. Let's really reassess the situation. Where do we really stand? And it's funny because I use the same advice. I use the same advice on myself sometimes. It's like, just take a breath, and Fridays are my day to do that. Like Monday through Thursday, I operate at a very high RPM. And Friday's kind of my day to be like, all right, let's really get to that 30,000 foot view and really look at the week. Did you move the ball forward? Yes, you took a huge step back yesterday, potentially. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, we moved the ball. It's like one of my son's football coaches used to say, a football team that averages 4 yards a play is undefeated. Literally, it's like, did you move the ball 4 yards? Like, that's all I'm looking for every single week. Did you move the ball 4 yards ahead of where you were? And at the end of the day, the answer most times is yes. That was a big pitfall yesterday, but I still think we're going to get 4 yards ahead. So that's what it is. But a lot of times it's I'm giving my own advice to the advice that I give to my clients. And yesterday I was just in no mood to have that level set conversation. And by the end of the night, Siobhan and I poured a glass of wine. We put on the last episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I highly recommend, by the way. I'm starting to learn that it's okay to sit down and watch a stupid show. It's okay. And now it sounds really strange when I say this out loud. I'm starting to understand why people consume the things that they do. Some of that like mindless stuff. It's just that it's that unplug. And it's like, man, I finally did it. I sat down last night and I finally started to open up about what had happened during the day. And I said, and I texted Siobhan this morning and I go, I'm really sorry for the way I was just pissed off and, slamming dishes around. And I was not myself. And she goes, I get it. She goes, I completely get where you were coming from, because you could just get all in on that stuff. So anyway, the point of my saying that is that's the call I'm going to make. But it is a lot of times just listening to my own words that are coming out of my mouth when it comes to my clients. And I think that's a healthy way to look at it.
I think it's the only way to look at it.
Yeah.
You got to take your own best advice sometimes.
Yep.
Because that way, even if you're wrong, you realize what you got to get better at. So.
Spoken like a true sage.
Hey, something in this coffee today. I don't know what it is.
There you go. I love, very philosophical show. I apologize. I have to run. What are you doing this weekend? Anything fun?
I'm heading up to lovely Canandaigua, New York tomorrow.
Beautiful.
That's as far as I got. Sunday, probably down at the lake, getting some shit done. Back in here, getting some work done. Life's a little hectic in KBL HQ. Stop me when that sounds repetitive.
Yep.
Yeah, man, just driving my Jeep in the sun, shining the windows down, trying to be like Ben Riley.
I'm literally about to go rip my doors off of the Jeep because they just changed the entire forecast for the weekend. So I have to take my son to go get his second vaccination here in about 20 minutes. I have to talk down a client right now, and then I will be from about 10 a.m. tomorrow, because we're finally having our first decent weather weekend. From 10 a.m. tomorrow till about 8 p.m. Sunday, I will probably burn 25 gallons of fuel on the lake. So if you need me, I will be. If you need me, you need to jump in the lake, swim out to the tube. We're going to do a couple figure eights. Then we can talk about something if you need me. So that's where I'll be.
Love to hear it.
Love it. 50. So what are we going to call this? Is this going to be season? So you've deemed this season 2, which if you have not seen the new graphics on the YouTube channel, you have to see them because they're super dope.
They're better for this one. I changed some stuff after the first 2.
So what are we calling this? What is this?
Technically, in typical AB convo fashion, I just kind of picked something and went with it. So technically, this is season 2, episode 3.
I love it. All right. So thank you for joining us for season 2. We didn't even discuss this. He just pulled the season 2 on me, which I love.
I didn't even discuss it with myself. It just felt right, dude.
I love it. I love it. I appreciate these conversations. And you know what? The fact that anybody watches these things is just icing on the cake for me, you know?
Aye, aye, Captain.
Enjoy the weekend. We appreciate you. Hopefully you have a great weekend, and we will see you next week. Peace out.
You want to do the see ya, or you want me to do it?
No, I'm back. I only did it once. I just wanted to see how it felt once. It feels great, but no, that's your thing.
See ya.